He humiliated her, betrayed her, and left her broken. But what he didn't know was that Grace would rise again, stronger than ever. Thanks for being here today. Before we dive in, tell me where you're tuning in from. Drop your city in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. Grace grew up in a small town in Kansas, the kind of place you could fold into your back pocket on a map, and where everyone knew each other's names. On the porch of her white painted wooden house, she and her mom baked every Saturday morning. Apple pies with flaky crusts, blueberry muffins that sold out first, and chocolate chip cookies whose buttery scent pulled kids from next door like bees to flowers. Life was simple, steady. School, church, the kitchen, the porch. Grace's mom worked in Kansas City as a housekeeper for the Reynolds family, a name everyone in town recognized, owners of half the downtown buildings and plenty of land on the edges too. One morning, her mother came home looking pale and exhausted. "Mom, are you okay?" Grace asked. Her mother smiled faintly and sank into a chair. The clinic said it was exhaustion. Too much traveling, not enough rest. The next day, Grace insisted on driving her into town to accompany her to work. The Reynolds house looked like a gallery. Stone walls, a chandelier dripping crystal light, a sweeping staircase daring you to climb it. Grace sat lightly in the living room, her eye tucked away behind a smile. A man in his mid-30s sat reading the Wall Street Journal, shirt crisp, posture sharp, presence commanding. "David," his mother called. "This is Grace, Linda's daughter." David looked up. His gaze was steady, practiced. "Nice to meet you, Grace." "You too," she murmured, eyes darting down at the polished floor rather than hold his. That day passed like a soft rain, quiet, ordinary, but leaving a trace. Grace helped set plates, dusted surfaces, filled silences with work. David walked by occasionally, nodding before returning to calls and numbers. Weeks passed. Each time Grace came with her mother, David noticed her more. He began small talk about farmers markets, football, the weather. "You bake all these yourself?" he asked one afternoon when she set down a tray of cinnamon rolls. "Yeah," Grace smiled. "It's a family recipe. I love waiting for the dough to rise. It feels like watching something slowly become what it's meant to be." David gave a rare smile. "That's a pretty good way to look at life." Mrs. Reynolds noticed. Elegant, sharp, used to making decisions, she wasn't subtle. "David," she said one evening, glass of scotch in hand, city lights reflecting in the window. "You're 35. It's time to settle down. But remember, our world has rules, unspoken but binding." David just stared at his drink. Not long after, David drove down to Grace's small town. He knocked on her porch door as she was pulling a pecan pie out of the oven. "David?" she gasped. They sat under the porch light, the scent of sugar in the air. His voice was low but firm. "Grace, I won't circle around this. I want you to marry me." Her hands trembled. "David, I'm just a small-town girl. My mom cleans your mom's house. I know," he interrupted gently, "and I don't care about any of that." The wedding was lavish at the grandest hotel in Kansas City. White linens flowing like mist, peonies and gardenias filling the air. Grace looked stunning, though nervous. Happiness and unease shared space in her chest. They moved into a modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows swallowing the sky. The first months were blissful. Grace learned to smile at charity galas, to nod politely at country club wives, to memorize wines she couldn't pronounce. David, though busy, still tried. But his stress from work mounted, something inside him shifted. At a dinner with investors, Grace mispronounced foie gras. She laughed awkwardly. David's correction, quiet but cold, froze her smile. Guests chuckled politely. Later, when she admitted she'd felt humiliated, he brushed her off. "You're too sensitive. Don't be so traumatic." That phrase became familiar. "You don't understand this world. You'll never fit in. You're still just small town." Grace bit her lip, clutching the counter in silence. Then came Natasha, brilliant, graceful, and alluring. Hired as David's executive assistant, she seamlessly managed his schedule. Initially a professional relationship, their closeness grew. Late nights at the office, business trips that blurred the lines. Yes, they did it. David was completely hypnotized by Natasha's charm to the point of losing his mind, until one night he took her home. "She's my assistant," David said flatly. Grace smiled politely, offered her hand. Natasha smiled back. Polite, perfect. At first, David managed to hide his lie, but a few weeks later, his honesty crumbled. "She's not just my assistant, she's the woman I love now." Grace's world was shattered. She never imagined David would betray the sacred love of their marriage. Tears filled her nights. But David didn't care. He remained immersed in his affair with Natasha, until one night she stood up, her voice trembling but firm. "I may come from a small town, but I have pride. I won't be your doormat." Divorce papers followed. Lawyers outlined property division, alimony, and a restraining order if necessary. Grace accepted what was fair, refusing more. She left with her head held high, determined to rebuild her life and her future. Back in her kitchen, she opened an Instagram page, Grace's Bakes. She posted pictures of pies, cakes, cookies. At first, just neighbors ordered, then friends of friends. A cafe placed an order. Farmers markets welcomed her booth. Within a year, she had her own storefront, then 3. Kansas City, Denver, Dallas. Local news ran a headline, "From small town girl to bakery CEO." Meanwhile, God answered Grace's prayer. David's business empire collapsed. The project failed, the investor fled, and the board of directors forced him out. Natasha left when the money ran out. The mansion was sold, the cars sold, the watch collection auctioned. One afternoon, wandering aimlessly, David found himself outside a familiar gated house, their old house. His breath caught when he saw Grace stepping out, coat draped over her shoulders, cell phone in hand, elegance etched in her posture. Her success had apparently allowed Grace to buy back the house. He approached the gate, but a guard blocked his way. David pleaded with the guard, "Please, I just need to talk to Grace." The guard hesitated, asking if he had an appointment with Grace. David said no, but he insisted on going in. The commotion distracted Grace, and she left the house. She was a little surprised to find David standing outside the gate with the guard. "David," she said quietly. David's shoulders slumped. "Grace, I'm sorry for everything. I was blind, cruel. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need to say it." David's eyes remained fixed on him expectantly. Grace, calm but unwavering. "You had a chance. I built this life without you, and you don't deserve to be in it now." She nodded at the guard. The gate closed. David stood outside blankly, watching Grace walk back inside with the grace and strength he once mocked. In her kitchen, Grace put on her coat and smiled faintly, savoring the vanilla scent that filled the air. Tomorrow meant an early start, a new recipe, a new order, a new store opening. He stirred the sugar in a bowl, whispering to himself, "Good job today." Somewhere across town, David sat alone at the kitchen table, silent. He remembered what Grace had once said. Waiting for the dough to rise was like watching life slowly come into its own. He finally understood. Some rise, some fall. And Grace had risen higher than he ever imagined.